Hi, good evening, good afternoon, good morning, depending on wherever you are. Welcome to the Peaceful Surrender. I'm Vanessa Weathers, creator of Espirito Libre, a service I designed to help people heal from trauma and stress using trauma informed spiritual care. The intent of the Peaceful Surrender is to just have some time wherever we may be in our cycle of life to come together and release, to surrender anything that's not serving us, to just, sort of let go and clear so that we may reclaim our energy and redirect it to things that are of our benefit. And so this is the fourth episode of this series. So, woo, little celebration, 4 episodes in, so about a month in. And I'm definitely really enjoying this format. It has, obviously challenges, but they're very minuscule in comparison to other ways of creating content. So it's definitely a series that I plan on continuing and investing more time in. If you didn't have the opportunity to view or attend the prior 3 episodes, I'll just give a brief recap, or even if you did, it's always good to have like a brief recap of sort of what I've talked about or what we've covered so far in this series. So up into this episode, we really have been talking about surrendering or releasing in terms of expressing, ourselves through communication, verbal, written, or other ways. We have definitely focused a lot on mindfulness and meditation and using that as a way of surrendering and also re-energizing. And so for tonight, I kind of want to shift our focus to another form of release, and that's through the form of physical activity. And so I want to give a little bit of background around that tonight, and then also we can engage in some physical activity together. So I have a couple different physical activities for tonight, and as well as sort of the spiritual aspect of these activities. So hopefully you enjoy tonight's episode. But as always, we'll first start by grounding ourselves in. So wherever you are, just kind of start to shrug your shoulders. You might feel the need to maybe stretch your neck from side to side. You may feel like bringing softness to your eyes and maybe even closing them altogether. Just being mindful of starting to release any tension that you're holding in your physical body that you may or may not have been aware of. And also just kind of bring awareness to your breath. Don't change the rhythm, just kind of bring attention to the natural rhythm of your breathing. And as you bring attention to your breathing, you can add in a visualization of, on each inhale, seeing a white light entering your body. And then on each exhale, seeing any unwanted energy or feelings or thoughts exiting your body in whatever form is meaningful to you. Okay, just a couple more breaths. Inhale and exhale. And just start to gently come back to physical awareness and open your eyes. All right. So how have you been? Yeah, I've had a very interesting week. I would describe this week as like heavy in a really odd way. And I know that it was heavy in terms of a lot of significant activities happening at the cosmic level, as well as politically in the United States with the elections and everything. But one of my friends made this statement that it felt like it was a week of Mondays. And I'm like, that just so perfectly, I think, describes the feeling that I experienced this week. But here we are and we are here to surrender and to release. And as I mentioned in the introduction, we are going to be focusing on surrendering tension from our body through physical rest. And so physical rest is any activity that releases tension and restores calm to our physical body. It's found through a variety of practices that we can do that will help us find relief and rest, as well as addressing any aches and pains that sometimes we ignore, or maybe we accept them as sort of like the normal for our life. So they say that there are two different types of physical rest. There is passive physical rest, which can be equated to activities such as like sleeping, including napping, or just really physical stillness. Whereas, or in contrast to active physical rest, which is us engaging in any activity that improves our physical well being. Some examples are massage, exercise, stretching, and yoga. And speaking of yoga, we're going to go in a little bit deeper into that topic, but obviously still just the tip of the iceberg in terms of the depth of information and understanding that fall within the yogic practices, which have been around for such a long time and still have applicability to today and meaning for today and value for us today. So all of that to say that I'm definitely not going too deep into it, but hopefully a little bit more background in comparison to maybe some other programs that talk about yoga and may not really speak on the origins of it from the point of view of the ethnic groups that were involved in creating these practices, which I think is a very important aspect in terms of honoring any spiritual practice that you engage in. So when I say yoga, what kind of comes to your mind? So take a moment to think about that. So you may think of the yoga asanas or the poses. So maybe when you hear the word yoga, you think of like somebody in a downward facing dog position, or in another sort of yoga asana, or maybe you thought of like a certain aesthetic with, like the yoga pants and, even a certain type of person that is in a modern sense connected with yoga these days. But in general, when people say that they're going to a yoga class, they really mean an asana class, because an asana is just one of the many parts of yoga. It's a small part of the overall yoga tradition and yogic beliefs. And yoga as a whole is very comprehensive because it includes practices that touch on all aspects of self. So the body, breath, mind, intellect, spirit. So the yogic practices are so comprehensive that they touch on all aspects of self. So yoga's origin can be traced back over 5,000 years. So that's just like astonishing. So 3000 BC, yoga's origins could be traced back even that far. They originated in northern India. And yoga is just one of 6 schools of philosophy in Hinduism, but it's also a major part of Buddhism as well. In yogic lore, it is told that Shiva is seen as the first yogi and the first guru, and that several thousand years ago, on the banks of a lake in the Himalayas, he poured his profound knowledge into the legendary Saptarishis, or 7 sages. So those sages then carried his powerful yogic science to different parts of the world, including like Asia, the rest of Asia, the Middle East, Northern Africa, and South America. But it really took root in India. The word yoga is derived from the Sanskrit root yuj, which means to join or to unite. So the intent of yoga, as according to the yogic ancient scriptures, is to help us unite as individuals within ourself, our individual conscious, so our individual consciousness and the universal consciousness, to have a perfect harmony between mind, body, spirit, and nature. So it's always been a spiritual practice. And I think that's something that has unfortunately gotten lost over time or separated um, over time as yoga has become more westernized. And I'll touch on why, or one of the reasons why that has occurred. But yoga in the West took off in the late 1800s, so in the 1890s. That's when Indian monks began to travel around the Western world for the first time, spreading the yogic knowledge. Unfortunately, in 1924, there was an act that was enacted and put forward by a U.S. representative by the name of Albert Johnson and a senator named David Reed. So this act was came to be known as the Immigration Act of 1924 or the Johnson-Reed Act. The U.S. Representative Albert Johnson, he was a eugenics advocate. And in case you're unfamiliar or you're not familiar with eugenics, it's really this belief that some races are inherently superior to others based on faulty science, or it's not even science, based on information that has been since been disproven many times. But really, think of it as a euphemism for white supremacy, because that's what the eugenics thought system believed in, is that white as the race or the social construct was most supreme. So because of that, because an extremely racist person had a seat of power in the U.S. government and then found co-conspirators to work with him, they architected this act that, again, was seeking to preserve American identity by preserving its ethnic homogeneity. So what Senator Reed said, these are his words, disregards entirely the earlier legislation around immigration, disregarded entirely those of us who are interested in keeping American stock up to the highest standard. That is, the people who were born here. He believed that immigrants from Southern and Eastern Europe, most of whom were Catholic or Jews, arrived sick and starving and were less capable of contributing to the American economy and were unable to adapt to American culture. And so eugenics was used as a justification for the act's restriction on certain races or ethnicities of people. So I think this is important to discuss as you're discussing yoga, because you had a very real effort to suppress the spiritual knowledge of a lot of countries that were deemed inferior because of bias towards the white race. And so that had a huge impact on the ability for that, that spiritual exchange of knowledge exchange. And I think provided, unfortunately, an opportunity for misinformation to seep in once the people who were part of originating or had the knowledge of the people who originated these practices were not allowed to come into the country. So I think it's important that we talk about these aspects of spiritual practices and the ways in which colonization and white supremacy have, harmed their ability to be led and not owned. I don't, think that's the right word, but to be promoted within society by the ethnic groups that originated them. And so when people say, like, the US was founded on racism, that is definitely one example, like one clear, tangible example. And if you were to go out on, Wikipedia and look into this act, they actually have a chart that will tell you, like, by country, what were those quotas were. And they definitely had an emphasis on letting immigrants in from the UK, Germany, and Ireland at that time. And so, that obviously altered the future, right, of our country in terms of representation and which cultures were elevated and put on a pedestal, which spiritual beliefs, right, were elevated and put on a pedestal, in which the others that were kind of demonized there. So, but back to yoga, obviously it has a lot of benefits to the physical self, right? And so it is a form of active physical rest while you're simultaneously getting that spiritual benefit to it as well, because you're engaged in mindfulness. So you're being very attentive to the physical sensations of your body. You're being very attentive to your breathing throughout it. And then there are other things that you can layer in, like visual imagery, whether that be, different lights, colored lights, or, really any imagery that resonates for you can also help to enhance your yoga practice. So I thought that we could try 2 asanas together tonight. So I have two of them that I have lined up. And so I'll give you a little bit of background, then do a demonstration. And if you want to join along, awesome. If not, sit back and watch and maybe do it at a future time that works better for you, so that you too can get the benefit of these asanas. So again, asana is the Sanskrit word for pose. So this first pose that we'll do is called Baddha Konasana, or more commonly known in the West as the butterfly pose. But Baddha Konasana, from the Sanskrit perspective, means bound angle. So that's a really good way of just kind of describing the body when it's in this asana or position. In terms of the physical benefits of this asana, it really helps in stretching the lower spine, hips, inner thighs, and the groin area. This is an important area in our body because a lot of people who have experienced like trauma, stress, whatever, as humans, we tend to store a lot of that in our body, in our physical cells, in the form of tension, which then turns into pain, right? Spasms, whatever, uncomfortableness. But we also store that energetically in that area of our energetic body as well. So this pose is addressing both the muscles and bone structures that are in this area of our body, but also to help open up our energetic being as well, clear any stuck, unwanted negative energy that may be lingering in this area of our body. So I'll talk through how we're going to get into this pose. It's pretty straightforward. Obviously, be mindful of any physical limitations that you may have. So make adaptations. This should feel comfortable and good. So if it doesn't feel that way, please stop and make a modification so that it does you do get comfort out of this. All right, so what we'll do is we'll come to a seated position, and then we'll bring the bottoms of our feet together and just slide our feet a little bit away from our body, just a little bit. Again, you don't want to feel any discomfort, so be mindful of the edge of your stretch. And then we'll just fold forward, bring our head to our feet, and then allow our spine to round down as we're coming into that position. We can rest our hands on our feet or on the floor, whichever feels most comfortable. And then, for tonight, I just want to cover the poses, but definitely be mindful of your breath as you're in this position. And I'll try to remember to do some verbal cues. Sometimes I get so into the positions that I forget to do the verbal cues, but I will prompt around, your breath as well too. So I just have to make some adjustments to my camera so you can see my yoga mat. Okay. All right. So again, this is Baddha Konasana. All right. All right. Great. You can still see me. Hopefully you can still hear me, but we'll come to a seated position. Put the soles of our feet together and just kind of let your knees fall to the sides. But again, this is about feeling good, so don't do anything that brings you pain or discomfort. And then we're just going to slide our hands out and round our back forward and place your hands on your feet or on the floor, whichever most comfortable. And you should feel this really nice stretch across the bottom of your back and in your hips and thighs and along your back as well, and maybe even in your arms, depending on where they are. And just really kind of lean into the pose, again, to your level of comfort, and focus on your breath, inhaling and exhaling. One more breath. All right, and just gently roll up back to a seated position. That felt good. Okay. Back up. And now we'll move on to the second asana I have teed up for tonight. So again, hopefully you enjoyed Baddha Konasana, butterfly pose. The next pose that we're going to do is called Supta Matsyendrasana. Supta Matsyendrasana, or reclined twist. So again, this asana really helps with stretching the back, hips, our glutes. It's good for stimulating blood circulation for our digestive system. So again, if you are somebody who holds tension in these areas, or maybe these areas are stimulated when you are feeling, anxious or stressed, these are really good poses to help alleviate some of those physical, mental, and spiritual symptoms. All right, so we'll talk through it again, and then I will do a demonstration. So we're going to lie on our back, bring both of our knees to our chest, open our arms out to the sides like wings, and then we're going to drop our legs over to one side. So either to the left or the right, you get to pick. And then look towards the opposite side. So if you drop your knees to the left, you're going to turn your head to the right there. Then we'll spend a few moments in that position, come back, bring our knees back up to the center, drop them over to the opposite side, and then look in the opposite direction there. So again, this is Supta Matsyendrasana. All right, let me adjust the camera here. All right, so this is not a huge space that I'm in, so I may have to adapt just based on space. But again, come lay on your back. Should be fully extended, and hopefully you can still see this. And then you're gonna stretch your arms out like wings, so fully. Bring your knees up, and then drop them to one side. So I'm going to the left, and turn your head to the opposite side. So I'm looking to the right. And you can feel this really, really, really good stretch. Again, in the hips, in your lower back, your thighs, pelvic region, and in your arms, across your arms and across your chest. And just be mindful of your breath. Make sure you're continuing to breathe, inhaling and exhaling. All right, now you can bring your knees up through center. I'm going to face the other way. I'm going to bring my head down here just in case weren't able to see the top half of me that way. All right. And now we'll do the opposite side. So knees in the middle, arms stretch out to the sides like wings. I'm going to go to the right this time. So I'm placing my knees to the right, which means I'm going to look to the left. And definitely feeling that stretch along my left hip, which feels very nice because I do hold a lot of tension in my hips. And then focusing on our breath, so inhaling and exhaling. Okay, one more breath. All right, and bring your knees back through center. And gently roll up into a seated position. And take a moment, before standing up or anything, especially if you're, have blood pressure issues or you're prone to lightheadedness as you're standing up. Just take your time. It's not a race. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed that pose too. So those are just one of many poses that are part of the yogic practice of yoga, and that were created to address mind, body, spirit sort of simultaneously. So I've always been a huge fan of yoga, even before I knew the more spiritual aspect of it. It was a practice that always appealed to me because of the intentionality in it and the mindfulness and the way in which, it was kind of the focus wasn't for me weight loss or the physical fitness aspect of it. For me, it was always just a really great way of getting in tune with myself, having some time to quiet thoughts. It was always, I guess, a very spiritual experience for me, even though I may not have been explicitly aware that it was a spiritual experience that I was having. So it's been amazing to learn more about the history behind the practice, because it has deepened the meaning for me. I also feel called to help, honor the origins around, the ethnic groups that created the practices of yoga, and have been, taking time to really get educated from people um, from the areas in which, yoga is indigenous to their area. And so there are some creators that I can definitely recommend that you follow that I get a lot of my information from, and will continue to get information from as I continue to sort of decolonize my views around, yoga, meditation, and things of that nature, because that's what I engage in a lot as an energy therapist. It's really good for energy therapy. All right, so we did some yoga tonight. We're surrendering the any physical tension, right? Another great active physical rest activity is dance. And so, dance is as old as time, really. So scientists and historians and archaeologists have found evidence of dance being part of, human or humanoid cultures for millennia. They even have observed behavior in primates where it suggests that dance comes natural to us. And if you've ever been around a newborn or a young, not a newborn, but like a young child, once they're able to kind of hold their legs up and stuff, they do that natural bounce once they hear music. And it's kind of the same, regardless of where you are in the world. It's the cutest thing. And it's like a shared experience. And it's part of our physical development as we, you know, continue to learn about being in a physical or human experience. Dance helps guides us through that experience in many different ways. But it's natural. It's natural to us. So for me, dance has been a part of my life for as long as I can remember. I'm not like a professional dancer. I've never taken like a dance. Well, I have taken dance classes like Zumba, stuff like that. But like it was definitely part of my family's culture growing up. Some of my earliest memories are um, getting together with my older siblings. So I'm the youngest of six, and getting together in the basement of the apartment that we lived in and turning that into sort of like our little own space to dance and watch. I think we had a TV down there, but mostly we were dancing. And my oldest sister would buy us little Debbie snack cakes, and we would, like, I think it would be Friday nights, we would get together and just have our own little party. And I was probably like 5, 6 years old at this time. And I'm sure it was something that we were doing before then, but those are my earliest memories of dancing. It was with my siblings, and we would just be dancing, listening to all sorts of music, having the best time ever. You can't convince me that anybody was having as good a time as us when we were doing those dance parties. So dance has definitely been part of my individual experience, family experience. Even whenever we get together as a family to this day, if there's a beat at all that can be bounced to or danced to, we're getting together. We're going to start dancing. Somebody's going to dance. And so it's such a natural and intuitive thing for us to engage in as a form of active physical rest. And so I've teed up some songs tonight, and I'm just going to dance. And I hope that, again, whether you're with me right now or you're watching this at a later time, that you take the time to dance. Maybe you don't dance along with me to my music. You can certainly put me on pause and put whatever you you want to listen to on, and then come back and join me later. But I hope you take the time to dance. And so we're going to just intuitively dance. And then I want to introduce a little bit of mindfulness into this as well. So how can you create a little bit more mindfulness to something that's just so natural and intuitive to us, but also not overthink it as well? Because I know there's a lot of like societal pressures that can exist around dancing, right? Probably as soon as I suggested like dance, there was maybe a little feeling inside of like self-consciousness or whatever. So this is not a dance contest, right? And for me, this is like, it's going to be very vulnerable for me too, because I'm here by myself. But you know what? I'm going to pretend like I'm going to try to get to this point where I'm not aware that the camera's here, and just kind of get in my element and help guide you to, as the songs progress, on how to bring maybe a little bit more mindfulness to when you're dancing. Yeah. So let's just, dance a little bit. Let me get this music on. Make sure my speakers are still on. Channel, right? Channel. Baby, calm down, calm down. Yo, this your body, put in my heart for lockdown, oh lockdown. Yo, you sweet life, phantom, phantom. If I tell you say I love you, you know they for me, young girl, oh young girl. No, tell me no, 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 oh, 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 oh. Baby, come give me your lo, 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 oh, 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 oh. You got me like whoa, 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 whoa. Shawty gon' give me a lo 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 whoa, 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 whoa. I see this fine girl from my party, she wear yellow. Every other girl they do too much, but this girl mellow. Now in my divine situation, I go use they tell I'm mellow. Finally, I find way to talk to the girl, but she know I follow. When you on the phone for one, when you know I call for one, then I start to feel like I'm born. But she dey give me small, small one. I know, say she said the pass it down one. But she feeling insecure, cause her friends, when they come my light ring go on. When they come my light ring go on. Baby, calm down, calm down. Yo, this your body, put in my heart for lockdown, oh lockdown. Yo, you sweet life, phantom, phantom. If I tell you say I love you, you know they for me, young girl, oh young girl. No, tell me no, 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 oh, 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 oh. Baby, come give me your lo, 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 oh, 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 oh. You got me like, oh, 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 oh. Shawty, come give me your lo, 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 oh, 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 oh. As I reach my house, I see me got a small walk. As me, I wake up, now she did my mind go walk. Yeah, one day, two, one of you folk go was. Now, so me, I go down, so me feeling go walk. As I start to get alive, you know my heart is. Baby, girl, if you leave me, I don't wanna be again. Because he gave many else we put my pocket. Baby, you feel my pain. Baby, calm down, calm down. Yo, this your body, you put in my heart for lockdown, oh lockdown. Yo, you sweet life, phantom, phantom. If I tell you say I love you, you know they for me, young girl, oh young girl. No, tell me no, 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 oh, 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 oh. Baby, come give me your lo, 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 oh, 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 oh. You got me like, oh, 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 oh. Shawty, come give me your lo, 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 oh, 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 oh. I love that song. It's like one of my favorite songs of the moment. Well, it's been since June, because I first heard it when I had the fortune of traveling to the Dominican Republic, and I had this amazing spiritual experience when I first heard it. And as we were driving through the Dominican countryside, and I looked upon just the nature, the way of living, and I know that people may look at it and feel sorry, and that's valid. But I looked at it and I was like, what a nice way of living, because you're self-sufficient, at least from what I saw on the countryside there. So it ended up being, and the sun was shining, and the person that was helping to lead the bus that we were on, who was kind of talking, like the tour guide, I guess, was just like amazingly like informative about, the local culture and stuff. So I always equate that song to that experience now. And it's just like a wonderful song. As is this song, which has special meaning to me too, because me and my son love to dance to this. He's 4 years old, and we'll dance to this around the house. Busy body, busy tonight. Making all the dummy tonight. Your busy body giving me life, oh, hey life, hey. How you do me like Joanna, Joanna? How you do me like Joanna, Joanna? How you gonna do me like Joanna, Joanna? Hey Joanna, Joanna. Joanna, why you do me just like that? I go give you all my love. Love me too, I love you back. Joanna, you be the my damn sugar. Oh, hey. Give me your goodie bag, I want your goodie bag, baby. Give me your goodie bag, I want your goodie bag, baby. Big package, hey. How do I manage? Hey, you gon' make me turn savage. Hey, body cause damage. Joanna, Joanna. How you do me like Joanna? Joanna. How you gonna do me like Joanna? Joanna. Hey, Joanna. Hey, Joanna. Joanna. Ay. Hey, how you gonna play me like Drogba? How you gonna do me like Drogba? Oh, DJ Drogba. Hey, DJ Drogba. Love that song too. And like, I'm definitely genuinely enjoying this, the smile and stuff. It's just like, as I'm dancing, I'm thinking about the memories that I have. And in this moment, these are happy memories that I'm experiencing. There are times when I'm engaged in dance and stuff, and it's more sorrowful or solemn, even in a way. And I still find solace in dancing, because it's just about surrendering, right? In order to really get caught up in the moment, you really have to release and surrender any pressures you may feel around, like whether it's, oh, this is silly, or I don't know how to dance, or what if I'm not on beat, or whatever. You have to really just silence all of that and just, lean into it. And the music is really important too, right? So for me, these songs that I have chosen for tonight have personal meaning, whether it be associated with memories or the lyrics are meaningful, like this one. Like, I heard this 2 years ago and it was like my anthem. It became my mantra. It's Nostrea Star. And it's just such a meaningful song for me now because of the lyrics, and it's like affirmational, and it's like my power song. So I put this on when I'm in my power, and I just want to like lean into that a bit. Down, baby, you are the one. Dance like you own the sun. Fulfill your destiny. They bow down to you. Fulfill your destiny. They bow down to you. Knowing you're a star. Knowing how to hold your own. Bring it to your heart. Let it guide you to your life. So yes, if you gotta shine, you gon' shine so bright. If you gotta dance, you gon' dance so bright. So, mindful. How do we bring some mindfulness into this? So first, you don't want to overthink it. Just get to moving your body and just engaging any muscles, as many muscles as you can. That feels good. Again, know and honor your limitations. It's fine. You can work around anything. So you're just going to really want to just start by getting your body into movement. And then you can layer on top of that, becoming more mindful of the beat. You don't have to, hit every beat, but the beat you want to land on and just getting in alignment with that rhythm. And you can even do something verbal, be like, oh, boom, 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 boom. You could do that in your head, and that way your awareness is engaged on that. And just that action alone is bringing more mindfulness to your movement. And then you can layer on, doing that body scan and sensing around, what am I feeling in my physical self right now? Where you may want to focus your movements on and stuff. Remembering, to get your arms involved too, and lifting your arms up, right? And then layering on other visual imagery in terms of, again, if this is, what you're trying to work through at the moment, right? So I was almost going to go down a path of, bias towards the happy, but maybe you're trying to work through something a little bit more solemn, but trying to evoke some mental imagery around what release would look like to you from those emotions, from those thoughts. You can imagine like a mist coming out of your body, or maybe it's a smoke leaving you. But just, starting with the basics first, so you're not overthinking it, and then layering on more mindful activities. And then, of course, our breath, right? Making sure you're breathing through the movements. So I'm going to kind of slow it down a little bit. Jump with me. I should have heard my feet. So it's on. I should have heard your name. So it's on. Thought about these pieces. So don't go home. Tell me more. I just also wanted to mention another aspect too is like singing along, if you know the words. Don't worry about what you sound like or anything, or even humming as well, because a lot of times I don't know the words, but it also doesn't matter, right? But it is, when you're engaging your voice and your voice box, it provides a nice vibration for your body. And so I don't know if it's picking up, but I'm like, for every song, I'm like humming along with it, because that helps me also sync to the rhythm of the song too. Is there something to think about? Is this just broken up? Is there nothing shed this time? Is this just a breakup line? Should hurt your feet? Shake on me. Should hurt your feet? Shake on me. Another thing I find myself doing too is like closing my eyes, because I find myself being quite visually stimulated a lot. So it helps me to just dampen that sense so I can exert that energy or redirect that energy towards being more mindful and stuff. So that's another thing that you could do. You could try out too. Some people prefer to listen to their headphones as they're dancing, even if they're with themselves, and just because it helps block out other auditory elements as well. So definitely encourage you to personalize this experience for you, for yourself, and knowing what you like and you don't like, to make it, more conducive to what's going to help you to surrender and just get in the moment. Another sort of visual imagery thing that I do to help replenish energy is to, usually I have to have my eyes closed for this, but is to think of like a source of light like above you. Generally I'm thinking like that soft white sort of glow, or like, the sun, as if you were to look at the sun with your eyes closed though. And just imagine and focus on those rays of light hitting you and reaching every corner of your body, and add that into, your movements and stuff, and imagine what that would look like, That's a newer song for me, but I like it still. I like a wide variety of music, but mostly ambient, ethereal type of stuff. Because I love, to me, it represents like space in like the literal sense, like the cosmos, but also like space in terms of like the space that we exist in, and like limitless space though. So that I love the idea of like infinity and no limits, no boundaries. Awesome. Oh my goodness. Well, I had had such a wonderful peaceful surrender episode session with you guys all. Definitely appreciate you watching and participating. And I hope that you got value out of something tonight. And I wish you well wherever you are in your cycle. And I hope that you are treated kindly in the coming days and that you're able to find pockets of time for yourself to focus on you and loving yourself and taking care of yourself and indulging in things that make you feel good and affirm who you are as a person. And until next time, take care. Again, thank you so much for joining tonight. And I look forward to our next session together. Bye.